Okay.
Hi, we're the infrastructure group. And I don't know if you remember right at the beginning, when we first started, we created this kind of pyramid effect. And first of all, we combined a brainstorm of all our concepts. So we looked at the qualities that we each possess and what we could bring to the group. So this represents different layers, different materials, the aging of buildings, the layout and structure of buildings for safety and aesthetics. And we decided to choose one building which we could all put our own spin on, to create the desired effect from our field. And we selected a pyramid because we didn't have much time that afternoon and it was easy to replicate. The window on the front shows that you can see the build-up of the structure and you can see the different layers within it. So you can see that it starts with a small structure on the right-hand side, and then each layer creates the whole effect. And this gave us a concept of layers which we wanted to continue throughout this whole semester. And one theme that ran throughout all our work was the use of maps, and that was a real focus that we wanted to take forward.
So we had the idea of using a map, but Gareth suggested that since we started off as a group of 5, and Kirsten just said join our group later, yeah. So because we were a group of 5, he suggested why not use senses as a foundation for our work, and so we decided to incorporate those senses and use that to create a map of the city of Cardiff. So.
And then we decided to narrow it down to just using sound, sense of sound, because then that way it's less biased, as there are ways to record it compared to like smell and touch. And then it's also about the time constraints. The amount of time to research each sense will take us a lot of time, so then we just thought doing the sound.
So to get the map, we decided to go to the old libraries altogether, and Carolyn suggested that, well, in the beginning we wanted to do all 5 senses, assign each one, and combine those maps as a layer, playing with the layer again, and kind of compare how those senses are put together. But instead of doing that, because of the length of time, she suggested to divide the map into 5 sections, which we divided into 6 in the end, and make a 3D model of our takes on the sound within our disciplines. So how we were able to replicate those sounds into a 3D outcome or 2D outcome as a group and see the differences and make a map.
From then, we each took our section of the map and we did a number of recordings each. So we limited it. So we didn't limit it. We said a minimum of 5 recordings per section. So for example, I did mine on the night of the France-Wales game at Emirates Stadium, and that's my section of the map. And so my recordings are all 30 seconds long, and I was walking through the streets recording them, whereas other people did their own take on it, where they'd stand still for a minute and a half and capture different sounds. So we all uploaded those individually onto SoundCloud, so there's evidence of that. And then from those recordings, our initial idea was to create a sound map where we'd use the map from the information centre and perhaps create an acetate sheet that goes over the top of that, which has printed on them the sounds which we recorded. So it tells you where the greater sounds are and where the quieter sounds are. And with that, on the right-hand side, there'll be a number of QR codes which will give you a live feed from some of those areas.
A live feed to the sound or to?
To a live feed of the Millennium Stadium on that day.
So
it'd be a continuous link which you could use, and that would be a relationship we'd establish with the tourist information.
Oh, interesting. So what, the live feed might be through the surveillance cameras or?
Yeah, the
if people go to tourist information and they're wondering where they want to go, if there's some kind of spots where they can listen to it so it's live, and if they sound interesting, then they might go there. Or
Okay. To give them a more sensory experience of where they might want to go, not just
rather than just
flat
looking at
map.
it playing out.
that was our first initial idea, and then from then we decided to use artists for our own research. So I think it's Carolyn's research next.
Yeah, I looked at Yasuaku Onishi because I thought that it's inverted, but it looks like waves. So I kind of related that into sound waves as well. And then I also looked at a guy called Ismini Samanido, where he explores the connection between craft practice and sound art, which I thought was what we were aiming to do. And it's exploring the physicality of sound, which we wanted to do, not relating sound and art, but visually looking at sound.
And then that brings us on to Kirsten's. Oh, there are a couple of views of the model, which we will talk about later on.
As Michael Sanko and Slida Heinrich, and what I'm doing like slow shutter speed, and like actually find photography is more of a hobby. So by doing that, I was more like challenging myself. And then as I actually looked at these, like I thought it was just like amazing how like it creates so many colors. I mean, if I actually had an image of how sound would be, like these would be how it is. Like the first one is like speed, and then like that's like speed. Well, all of them's like speed and movement to me. Like that, like two of them are roller coasters. And like it adds colour as well as sound to an image of what sound would be, and that's pretty much how I would like an image of sound to be if it actually had an image to it.
The next slide just shows a couple of the images that Kirsten took, which we can share at the end. And that brings us on to Anna's.
As a maker, I wanted to make something 3D and use unique materials or found objects to create my section of the sound map. And the image above is a customized necklace or keychain of someone's. You can write a message and it turns that into a physical form, and you can send that as a gift or something like that. So I thought that was interesting. And the below one is I like the use of the volume and how many layers, again, how it plays a role with our project, so I chose that image. And also I like that image because I used it as an inspiration for my experimental model, which I'll show you later on, of just a lot of one objects creating different kinds of forms.
And then that brings us to Beth.
When we started this, I hadn't really seen any sound sculptures before, so I literally just typed into Google sound sculptures, and these were the first ones that came up. I chose them because they linked perfectly with what we were looking at layers and things like that. And I liked these ones because they were really simple colours which just highlighted the shape, which I think that was our aim when we were creating our own forms. I also looked at these because I hadn't decided what material I wanted to use for my model yet, and these came up too, which I thought were really interesting because when I was thinking of how I was going to create my model, I just thought of a solid shape, whereas these are it's just paint, and it's just made by different sounds, so every time the sound changes, so does the sculpture, so it's different every time, which I thought was really interesting.
And then my work was inspired by a couple of guys called Dan and Dean, who used what's called the inversion house. So they used the materials used typically on the outside of the house to create a hole in the side, which was used as a piece of art which grew and grew as a tourist attraction. So I used, which on top left shows my section of the map, which I did really quickly on a piece of card, and then top right I enlarged that image and then put it on a bit of blue foam, and then the image at the bottom I tried to use the inversion house idea to create spikes that come out in particular areas of the city. So I did 5 recordings, and you can see 5 circles on the bottom image, and so the larger the sticks, the larger the sound in that area. And then that's just a picture of my final model. And that brings on to Ruby.
I decided to look at the phrase sound map more scientifically and literally, and I chose a different approach to what I do normally. So I took a map of my section of the area and I inverted it to distort the image. I didn't think the what you would actually see was more. I thought what I would, sorry, the sound was more important than actually what I'd see in the map.